ceremony. Now, James Johnson Duderstadt, we, the Board of Regents, invest you as the 11th President of the University of Michigan. We pledge to you our faithful efforts to advance the noble work of this university, to increase the knowledge and wisdom of our precious youth, our students, to expand through research the limits of man's knowledge of the world in all its parts, to maintain academic freedom in times when there are those who would politicize our universities for their own ends, and to thus serve all the citizens of Michigan, this nation, and the world. We wish you Godspeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Brown. Distinguished guests, members of the Board of Regents, faculty, students, and staff, alumni, friends, and family. It is a great honor and a great privilege to be able to serve my university and my state in this new role. In a sense, this marvelous institution embodies the hopes and the dreams, the commitment and the stewardship of 8 generations of Michigan citizens. To be chosen as its 11th president is a formidable responsibility to the people of this state and indeed to the nation and to the world. I might add that it is also a formidable challenge to follow such a distinguished and elegant group of speakers and to attempt to doctor the spin on the various images that they've provided of me over the last several moments. A poor little lamb who has lost his way, that's probably true. A large plush teddy bear, yeah, perhaps. A quintessential star of the space age, I doubt that. Illegal? Well, my parents are here. I'll ask them afterwards. I don't think so. One who quotes Ted Turner or T.S. Eliot. Actually, I'm surprised Dean Vest didn't point out that I've been given to quoting Bloom more recently. Oh, don't worry, President Gray, the other Bloom, Bloom County, Opus. A brother? I certainly hope so. There's one correction I should make, actually. I'm really only approximately the 11th president of the university. In that flurry of activity after I was designated as the next president, I received an enormous amount of mail, but one of the most interesting pieces I received came from 2 of our eminent historians who happened to teach a course on the history of the university. It came over electronic mail. Congratulations. Did you know that you're not the 11th president of the university? For some reason, the Regents did not renumber the presidents in 1929 when they changed the date for the founding of the university from 1837 to 1817. There is no doubt that if the University of Michigan began in 1817, that our first president was John Monteith, who was so appointed and so signed his letters. You are the 12th president, not the 11th. Well, as 11th or 12th president, you have our best support, best wishes, Peg and Nick Stenick. Maybe I actually should be regarded as the 11.4th president, because at that time the university was in the city of Detroit. It moved to Ann Arbor in 1837. But whether the 11th or the 12th president, the fact remains that in the 170-year history of this university, it has had remarkably few presidents, and therefore it's both a manageable and a mandatory task for any new president to read carefully the inauguration addresses of his predecessors. In doing so, I was quite impressed by how each responded to the times, how each set the tone for the subsequent administration. But I must admit that I was particularly influenced by the eloquent address of Marion Leroy Burton, who assumed the presidency of the university in 1920, shortly after the end of the First World War. I suppose it would be natural I'd be attracted to Burton because there's some rather unnerving similarities between us. We both assumed the presidency at the age of 45. We were both tall redheads. We're both graduates of Yale University. He was a graduate in divinity, but that's pretty close to engineering, at least alphabetically. I was particularly struck, however, by Burton's very simple and direct statement of the role of the public university. The function of the state university, stated Burton, is to serve the state, and through the state to serve the nation and the world. To serve. Perhaps that's the unique theme of higher education in America, because the bonds between the university and society are particularly strong in this country. Historically, our institutions have been responsible to, shaped by, and drawn their agendas from the communities that founded them. And perhaps nowhere is this more apparent than in our state of Michigan and with its institutions. For example, the founding principles of this institution can be found in those familiar words from the Northwest Ordinance that are chiseled over Angel Hall. Religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. Or perhaps it was appropriate that Michigan, a state with seemingly infinite resources of fur, timber, iron, and copper, a state with boundless confidence in the future, that this state should play such a leadership role in developing the models of higher education which would later serve all of America. For while the University of Michigan was not the first of the state universities, it nevertheless is commonly regarded as the model of the true public university, responsible and responsive to the needs of the people who founded it and who supported it, even as it sought to achieve quality comparable to that of the finest and most distinguished private institutions. So too our sister institution to the west, Michigan State University, was really the driving force stimulating the Morrill Act, and it has become the prototype of the great land-grant universities that serve America so well. Our sister institution to the east, Wayne State University, has provided an important model of the urban university seeking to serve the needs of one of this nation's great cities. The state of Michigan, through these institutions and the other public and private institutions which have arisen since, has provided a model of how higher education serves society through the Triad mission of teaching, research, and service. In a sense, these institutions grew up with our state. They responded to the changing needs and the aspirations of our people, first as Michigan tamed the frontier, then as it evolved through the Industrial Revolution to become the manufacturing capital of the world. They responded as the population of our state surged after the war years, and most recently as Michigan has sought to strengthen and diversify its economic base. And yet the strength of our state, its capacity to build and sustain such extraordinary institutions, lies not in looking to the past, but rather in its ability to look to the future, to take the actions and make the investments in the present that would yield prosperity and well-being for its people in the future. Hence, as I assume the responsibilities of leading the University of Michigan, it seems appropriate that I look ahead to suggest for a moment what some of those themes of our future might be and how our academic institutions will be called upon to respond once again. If we think about it for a moment, and this idea has been mentioned earlier this morning, the students we're educating today will in fact be citizens of the 21st century, and yet those of us as their educators are very much products of the 20th century, and in reality these institutions are products of the 19th century. It's important to ask, therefore, whether higher education in general and the university as we know it today is prepared to educate the citizens and to serve the society of the 21st century. Now, it's always dangerous to attempt to predict the future, but three themes of 21st century America seem crystal clear. They're themes driven by the changing nature of the population of our country, our growing dependence on the global community, and our shift from a resource-intensive to a knowledge-intensive society. Let me briefly explore these for a moment, and you'll see what I mean. America is changing rapidly today. Our population is aging as the baby boomers enter middle age and as the number of young adults declines. Indeed, there are already more people in this nation over the age of 65 than there are teenagers, and indeed that situation will remain for decades into the future. The United States will simply not be a nation of youth for the rest of our lifetimes. This fact poses a most serious challenge to institutions such as this university, which have traditionally served the young. But there's a far more profound change occurring in the population of our nation. The United States is rapidly becoming the most pluralistic, multicultural nation on earth. The groups we refer to today as minorities will become the majority population of our nation in the century ahead, just as they are today throughout the world. In this future, full participation of currently underrepresented minorities will be of increasing concern as we strive to realize our commitments to equity and social justice. But in addition, this objective will be the key to the future strength and prosperity of America, since our nation cannot afford to waste the human talent represented by its minority populations, their human potential, cultural richness, and social leadership. If we do not create a nation that mobilizes the talents of all of our citizens, we're destined for a diminished role in the global community, increased social turbulence, and most tragically, we will have failed to fulfill the promise of democracy upon which this nation was founded. This is perhaps the most serious challenge facing American society today. And while it is true that universities cannot solve this problem alone, we must not use this fact as an excuse for doing nothing. Rather, we must intensify our efforts to seek full participation of underrepresented minorities among our students, our faculty, our staff, and our leadership. Further, as both a reflection and a leader of society at large, we have a special challenge and a responsibility to develop effective models of multicultural, pluralistic communities for our nation. We must strive to achieve new levels of understanding, tolerance, and mutual fulfillment for peoples of diverse racial and cultural backgrounds. The second theme has to do with the fact that America is becoming internationalized. Every aspect of American life must increasingly be viewed from the broader context of participation in a global community, whether it's travel and communication, the arts and culture, the internationalization of commerce, capital, and labor. We have become increasingly dependent on other nations and other peoples. Further, as the destination of roughly half of the world's immigrants, the United States is becoming a true world nation with ethnic ties to all parts of the globe. Understanding cultures other than our own become necessary not simply for personal enrichment and good citizenship, but indeed for the very survival of our nation. If our institutions are to serve America in its role as a member of the global community, we must think and act more imaginatively, more aggressively, and more strategically to strengthen our role as truly international centers of learning. The third theme is more complex. Looking back over history, I believe that one can identify certain abrupt changes or discontinuities in the nature and the fabric of our civilization. The Renaissance, the Age of Discovery, the Industrial Revolution. There are many who contend that our society today is once again undergoing such a dramatic shift in fundamental perspective and structure as we enter a new age, an age that might be called an age of knowledge. The signs are all about us. Today we're evolving rapidly to a new post-industrial, knowledge-based society, just as a century ago our agrarian society evolved through the Industrial Revolution. New ideas and concepts are exploding forth at ever-increasing rates. We're increasingly surrounded by radical critiques of fundamental premises and scholarship. In many fields, the knowledge base is doubling every few years. Indeed, I used to have to warn the freshman classes that I taught that the knowledge that we were probably going to teach them would be obsolete by the time that they graduated. The typical college graduate of today will likely change careers several times during a lifetime. And what that implies, of course, is that a college education will only serve as a stepping stone to a lifetime of education, and that the ability to adapt, that is, to manage change, will become one of the most important skills of all. As our society becomes ever more knowledge-intensive and hence ever more dependent upon educated people and ideas, I believe it will become ever more dependent upon research universities as a primary source of new knowledge and those capable of applying it. The Triad mission of the university, as we know it today, the mission of teaching, research, and service, was shaped by the needs of an America of the past. Yet our nation is changing today at a rapidly accelerating pace. Hence, is it not appropriate to question whether our present concept of the university, developed largely to serve a homogeneous, domestic, industrial society, must also evolve rapidly if we're to serve the highly pluralistic, knowledge-intensive world nation that will be America of the 21st century. Of course, there have been many in recent years who have suggested that the traditional paradigm of higher education must evolve to respond to the challenges ahead of us. But will a gradual evolution of our traditional paradigm be sufficient? Or will the challenges ahead force a more dramatic, indeed a revolutionary shift in the paradigm of the contemporary research university? Well, I acknowledge that it's hazardous to speculate about the future. But there's another theme I believe I can predict with some certainty, and that's the challenge of change itself. We face a future in which permanence and stability will become less important than flexibility and creativity, in which the only certainty will be the presence of continual change itself. Here we face a particular challenge, since most of us have been trained to think in terms of change as a linear, a causal, a rational process. We've been taught that by looking at the past, we can extrapolate to view the future. And yet, perhaps it's because of my background as a physicist that I've become increasingly convinced that change in most complex systems, in most fields of knowledge, and indeed in most complex institutions like universities, is highly nonlinear, frequently discontinuous, and generally stochastic or random in nature, that is, unpredictable. Just as with other institutions in our society, I believe that those universities that will thrive will be those that are capable of not only responding to this future of change, but indeed have the capacity to relish, stimulate, and manage change. From this perspective, it may well be that the continual renewal of the role, mission, values, and goals of the university will become the greatest challenge of all. To prepare us for this future of change, it's essential that we keep in mind several important values. Of course, one of the canonical invariants that will allow us to respond to a future of change is an unrelenting commitment to academic excellence and scholarly values. This will require both courage and commitment, since in a future of limited resources, we must focus our resources to achieve excellence. Furthermore, while change and renewal may be important themes of our future, they can occur only upon a foundation of fundamental institutional values. Of course, academic institutions generally focus first on values of the mind, intellectual values, values such as the seeking of wisdom, freedom of inquiry, intellectual integrity, discipline of the mind, and the respect for reasoned conclusions. While these are, of course, essential in any university, there are other sets of values which we must not ignore. Values of moral character, such as honesty, integrity, courage, tolerance, and mutual respect. So, too, we must bear in mind those all-important values which characterize civilized societies: caring and concern and compassion, cooperation and communication and civility. These are the values that pull us together as a community. In a future characterized by rapid and unpredictable change, a future dominated by the themes of pluralism, internationalization, and knowledge, it seems that our universities will increasingly become the crucibles in which the new ideas and the social structures capable of responding to this future are created. Here we must take care that the ferment and the controversy that always surrounds the birth of new ideas does not tear apart our communities. We must recognize that in this future of change, these values of comity will provide the bonds that allow us to function as a community of scholars dedicated to serving the society that supports us. In these final moments, as we face a future of change, a time of challenge and challenges to our institutions, I would like to take this opportunity to challenge each of us in the constituencies we represent. First, a challenge to the administration of this university, to its regents, executive officers, and deans. The stewardship of this marvelous institution is a heavy responsibility. It requires total dedication and commitment on our part. And yet it is also the case that universities are fragile institutions. They are highly voluntary in nature, and indeed they may even be described as creative anarchies. We must never forget that while the primary responsibility for the distinction of the university rests on our shoulders, quality is determined at the grassroots level, at the level of our teaching and our research. Hence, the momentum and quality of this university, of any great university, must flow up from the faculty and the students and the staff and energize those of us in the administration. A challenge to the faculty. It is sometimes said, and I said it myself, that great universities are run by their faculties for their faculties. But I would hasten to add here that they are also run for their students and for the society that they serve. The quality of our institutions is determined by the quality of our faculty, by your talents, your commitments, by your actions. However, while your commitment to quality in your teaching and scholarship will determine the quality of this institution, let me suggest that something more is needed. Let me urge a greater sense of daring and adventure in your intellectual activities, because it's the excitement of attempting to push beyond the limits of our present knowledge that enlivens our teaching, our students, and our institution while best serving the society that depends upon us. A challenge to our students. If the faculty is the key to our distinction, then it also must be acknowledged that our students are the reason for our being. Hence, let me challenge our students to seek wisdom from the knowledge that you will learn in your studies, and seek to learn responsibility from the very considerable freedoms that you will be granted on our campuses. A challenge to our staff. While the primary functions of the university, teaching and research, appear at first glance to involve primarily faculty and students, We all know that these complex and remarkable institutions depend just as heavily on the talents and dedication of our staff. Hence, I believe it appropriate to challenge you as well to serve with imagination, pride, and competence, to encourage you to be always alert to better ways for the institution to accomplish its goals, and to convey to you my personal conviction that the fundamental values of an academic community simply cannot be sustained without your valued and frequently valiant efforts. A challenge to our alumni and friends: become involved with your institution, learn about us, tell us when we're wrong, and challenge us to rise to new levels of excellence. Help us to serve our state and our nation. A challenge to our sister institutions. One of the great strengths of higher education in America is the remarkable diversity among our institutions, a diversity that will become all the more important in a future of a pluralistic America. Yet despite this diversity, we have far more in common than in contrast. It seems clear that we can only face the challenges of the future if we come together in a new spirit of cooperation, setting aside meaningless competition, with the exception of this Saturday afternoon, of course, and instead working together to address the serious needs of our state, our nation, and the world. A challenge to state and federal government. As we prepare to enter this age of knowledge, our ability to sustain the strength of our state and our nation, to achieve the quality of life necessary for our citizens, will be determined more than any other factor by how we develop, nurture, and educate that most precious of our resources, our people. While it is true that our state and our nation have developed the finest system of higher education in the world, we must also remember that this resulted from the willingness of past generations to look beyond the needs of the present and to invest in the future by building and sustaining educational institutions of exceptional quality, institutions that have provided those of us in this auditorium today with unsurpassed educational opportunities. Today's public leaders have inherited these marvelous institutions that represent the commitments and sacrifices of previous generations. They face the challenge of being responsible stewards to preserve and enhance these precious resources to serve generations of the future. A challenge to the public at large. It is important to recognize that your public universities are deeply committed to serving the society that built and sustains them. They're not working on their own agenda, but rather an agenda that has been formed to respond to your needs. While it is always tempting to ask, "What have you done for me lately?" it is also important to embed this challenge to higher education in the dual context both of a history of past service and the challenges that will face our society in the future. Our nation has always believed deeply in providing each generation with the means for a better life. Our parents sacrificed for us, and we must be prepared to sacrifice for our own children. We simply must reestablish the priority both of our personal and our public investments in education, in the future of our children, in the future of our society. And finally, it seems appropriate to challenge myself to listen, to learn, and to understand the nature of this remarkable institution, the sacrifices people have made to build and sustain it, and the manner in which the state, the nation, and the world have come to depend upon it. To challenge myself to have the patience, the courage, the dedication, and the wisdom to assist it in continuing to serve the state and to serve the nation which gave rise to its birth. I'd like to direct now my concluding remarks to the people of the state of Michigan. For 170 years, there's been an unusually strong bond between the people of this state and your university, the University of Michigan. Generation after generation of Michigan citizens have reaffirmed a commitment to building and sustaining an institution capable of providing to their sons and daughters an education equal to the best of the nation. Your ancestors sought an institution capable of attracting to their state the most outstanding scholars and scientists, engineers and doctors, lawyers and other professionals so essential to prosperity and well-being. They recognize the need for an institution capable of creating through its teaching, research, and service the new knowledge and human capacities necessary to economic growth and development and the fuller realization of the human potential. And they sought an institution which could address through a myriad of public service activities the many challenges facing our state and our nation. This sustained public investment and confidence in this university over the decades has enabled it to serve the state in all of these ways and more. Today, our state faces serious challenges that will call once again on the vast resources of this institution. The challenge of pluralism, the challenge of participation in the global community, the challenge of the age of knowledge that is our future, and of course the challenge of change itself. Indeed, perhaps at no previous time in this state's history has there been a greater dependence upon this university for the people it educates, the knowledge it produces, the service it provides. It is true indeed that the University of Michigan belongs to the people of Michigan. It is your university. But it is a university built and sustained through the commitments and sacrifices of your ancestors, and it is a university that must be preserved and strengthened today through further commitments if it is to serve your descendants tomorrow. Through this unique partnership between a people and their university, we face together a future of challenge and responsibility, a future of opportunity and excitement, a future in which the University of Michigan is deeply committed to serving the state of Michigan, and by serving our state, serving our nation and the world. Thank you very much.
Special occasions call for special occasional poetry. Richard Tillinghast, a member of the Department of English Language and Literature since 1983, and the author of 3 books of poetry, will read stanzas of his own anapests, composed to mark the inauguration of President Duderstadt. Professor Tillinghast.
Thank you. This is a poem celebrating the University of Michigan, the new academic year that we are embarked upon, and our new president. Those station wagons with out-of-state plates bearing cargoes of hope and cocksureness have delivered their freshmen and gone away cheerless. The summer, the suntan, the sailboat, the gloves and the bats, they're out of date now. We're back in harness. New leases have been signed, new course packs designed, overrides have had their season, new keys have brightly been